The crisp, clean water from the kitchen faucet flowed with a steady, confident gush, filling Alex's glass to the brim. It was a simple act, a mundane morning ritual, yet for Alex, it held a deeper significance, a quiet rebellion against the invisible chains that bound their neighbors. They lived in Prosperity Point, a seemingly idyllic suburban enclave where every blade of grass, every exterior paint shade, and every drop of water was, theoretically, under the watchful eye of the Homeowners Association. Alex, however, had always valued true independence, a trait that often put them at odds with the petty tyrannies of the HOA's self-appointed guardians. Their home, a charming craftsman with a meticulously kept, drought-resistant garden that nonetheless thrived with vibrant life, was more than just for walls and a roof. It was a fortress of self-reliance, a secret testament to foresight and a quiet refusal to be dictated by the whims of others. The letter had arrived 2 weeks prior, a stark white envelope tucked beneath the brick of their mailbox, its contents a predictable cocktail of bureaucratic jargon and thinly veiled threats. It was from Mrs. Albright, the HOA president, whose meticulously coiffed hair and perpetually pursed lips were a familiar sight at community meetings, always ready to enforce the minutiae of the covenants with an almost religious zeal. The violation this time, excessive and unapproved water usage for landscaping, leading to undue strain on community resources and potential runoff issues. Alex had merely raised an eyebrow, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on their lips as they reread the paragraph threatening a disconnection of municipal water services if the egregious violation wasn't rectified within 14 days. They knew the truth, of course. Their garden flourished not from wasteful municipal water, but from something far more sustainable, a secret source that hummed quietly beneath their well-manicured lawn, a testament to years of meticulous planning and investment. Alex had always found the concept of an HOA, with its self-important board members and their endless rules, vaguely absurd. They remembered vividly the summer drought 2 years ago, when the municipal water pressure had dropped to a pathetic trickle, and neighbors had watched their carefully cultivated lawns wither into straw. That's when the seed of true independence had been planted. Alex had spent months researching, consulting, and finally investing in a state-of-the-art private well and filtration system, a marvel of modern engineering nestled beneath their property, drawing from a pure, abundant aquifer. The initial outlay had been substantial, but the promise of unfettered access to pristine water, independent of fluctuating municipal supplies or arbitrary community restrictions, was priceless. It was their quiet defiance, their silent triumph, over the vulnerabilities that plagued others. The system was designed to be entirely self-sufficient, requiring no connection to the city's lines for its operation, a fact that had been painstakingly verified by engineers and legal counsel before installation. It was perfectly legal, perfectly private, and perfectly invisible to the HOA. As the 2-week deadline loomed, Alex continued their routine, watering their flourishing hydrangeas and tending to their vibrant vegetable patch, entirely unconcerned by the escalating threats from Prosperity Point's self-proclaimed water czars. They knew Mrs. Albright, with her air of unquestionable authority, would never bother to investigate beyond the official city meter, a meter that, for Alex, effectively read zero because they simply weren't using municipal water. The irony was almost too delicious. They pictured Mrs. Albright poring over spreadsheets, convinced she was witnessing a deliberate act of defiance, blissfully unaware that her target was operating on an entirely different playing field. The mail had brought more stern notices, each one more formal and accusatory than the last, culminating in a final, chillingly worded letter delivered just yesterday. Effective 9 a.m., July 19th, your municipal water service will be permanently terminated until all fines are paid and compliance is verified. This morning, the air was unusually still, heavy with a silent expectation. Alex had brewed a pot of coffee, the aroma filling the quiet kitchen, and settled onto the porch swing, watching the street. Punctual as ever, a white utility truck with the logo of the municipal water department pulled up just before 9. A burly technician, his face grim, exited the vehicle, wrench in hand, and approached the curb near Alex's property line where the main water shut-off valve was located. Alex watched, utterly devoid of anxiety, as the technician crouched down, inserting his wrench and giving it a decisive, final turn. A soft click echoed in the morning quiet, seemingly sealing Alex's fate. The technician stood up, wiped his hands on his overalls, and gave a curt nod towards the house, a silent message of job done. He climbed back into his truck and drove away, leaving behind a profound stillness that, to any other homeowner, would have been a terrifying void. But Alex merely smiled. It wasn't a smug or triumphant smile, but one of quiet satisfaction, a deep contentment that settled in their bones. They walked back into the kitchen, the sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Without a moment's hesitation, they strode to the sink, twisted the faucet handle, and watched as a strong, clear stream of water gushed forth, sparkling in the morning light. The pressure was perfect, the flow unwavering, the rhythmic, almost imperceptible hum of the advanced well pump far beneath their property was the only witness to the HOA's spectacular, yet entirely unnoticed, failure. The battle, they knew, had just begun, but the HOA had already lost the first, most crucial round, completely unaware of the independent, flowing secret that sustained Alex's home. The quiet hum from beneath Alex's manicured lawn was the true heartbeat of their home, a rhythmic thrum that spoke of unparalleled independence. What the HOA, in its myopic self-importance, failed to grasp was not just a violation of their perceived authority, but a complete ignorance of Alex's carefully constructed reality. The water gushing from the tap wasn't a miracle. It was the culmination of meticulous planning and a substantial investment in a system designed for ultimate self-sufficiency. Deep below the neatly trimmed fescue, approximately 300 feet down, lay Alex's private well, a pristine source tapping into an abundant underground aquifer. This wasn't just a hole in the ground, it was a sophisticated engineering marvel. Water from the well was drawn up by a powerful, submersible pump, nearly silent in its operation. From there, it entered a multi-stage filtration system housed in a compact, climate-controlled utility shed tucked discreetly behind the garage. The first stage involved a sediment filter, capturing any larger particles before the water moved into carbon filters that removed chlorine, odors, and organic compounds, ensuring a clean, neutral taste. The true magic, however, lay in the subsequent reverse osmosis row membrane, which meticulously stripped away dissolved solids, heavy metals, and microscopic contaminants, leaving behind water so pure it rivaled any bottled brand. Finally, a UV sterilization unit provided a final safeguard, eradicating any lingering bacteria or viruses. This entire process was monitored by a smart control panel that regulated pressure, flow, and filter lifespan, occasionally sending a discreet alert to Alex's phone, an alert that the HOA would never, in their wildest dreams, imagine existed. This wasn't just water, it was freedom, bottled and delivered directly to every faucet in the house, immune to the municipal grid, its pressures, and certainly, its petty overlords. Life, post-cut off, was not just unaffected for Alex, it was gloriously, defiantly, normal. The morning after the municipal technician's visit, while other residents might have been cautiously conserving their dwindling bottled water supplies, Alex took a long, hot shower, letting the powerful spray invigorate their senses. The sound of the washing machine whirring through a full load of laundry echoed peacefully through the house. Later, Alex spent an hour in their garden, hose in hand, giving their hydrangeas a generous drink, the droplets sparkling in the morning sun. Each splash, each flowing faucet, was a silent testament to the HOA's colossal miscalculation. There was no desperate call to the city, no pleading email to Mrs. Albright, No frantic dash to the grocery store for emergency water jugs. Just the quiet hum of their system, a low, contented purr of independence that resonated through the very foundations of their home. Alex found a peculiar satisfaction in these simple acts, knowing that every drop of water used was a silent victory in their private war against bureaucratic overreach. Meanwhile, in the sterile, air-conditioned confines of the Prosperity Point HOA office, Mrs. Albright sat rigidly at her desk, her gaze fixed on the digital water meter readings for Alex's property, 0. It confirmed the cutoff. Good, she muttered to herself, a triumphant glint in her eyes. Let's see how long Mr. Caldwell lasts without basic amenities. That landscaping will shrivel up in no time, and he'll come crawling. She envisioned Alex's frantic phone calls, their desperate pleas for reconnection, and the eventual, humiliating climb down. Mrs. Albright prided herself on being firm, on upholding the covenants, even if it meant being a bit assertive. She believed she was teaching a lesson, maintaining order in the community. But days turned into a week, and the expected frantic calls never came. The digital meter for Alex's property stubbornly remained at 0, indicating no municipal water usage. This was expected, of course, as the water was off. What wasn't expected was the utter silence from Alex. Not a single email, not a desperate knock on Mrs. Albright's door. Nothing. Her triumph began to curdle into a vague unease. She found herself driving past Alex's house more frequently, a casual detour disguised as a routine patrol. The garden, far from wilting, remained a lush, vibrant testament to flourishing plant life. The grass, rather than turning brittle and brown under the scorching summer sun, maintained an unnerving emerald green. Had he bought dozens of water bottles? Was he secretly hauling water in? The thought was ridiculous, but the unexplained normalcy gnawed at her. One sweltering afternoon, Mrs. Albright decided a more direct approach was warranted. She dispatched Kevin, the HOA's new, rather nervous groundskeeper, on a seemingly innocuous task. Kevin, she instructed, her voice deceptively sweet, could you just check the drainage around Mr. Caldwell's property? We had a complaint about runoff, you know, just a quick visual inspection. Her real motive, of course, was for Kevin to subtly observe if there was any unusual activity, any hidden hoses, any signs of secret water delivery. Kevin, obliging but clueless, drove to Alex's property, spent a few minutes poking at a storm drain near the curb, and then, under Mrs. Albright's watchful eye from her own car parked discreetly down the street, made his way around the side of the house. He saw nothing out of the ordinary, no overflowing spigots, no suspicious trucks delivering tanks. He noted the healthy plants, shrugged, and reported back to Mrs. Albright that everything seemed perfectly normal. Normal? Mrs. Albright bristled internally. Nothing about this situation is normal. The seed of confusion had been planted, slowly, subtly, beginning to sprout into genuine bewilderment within the rigid, rule-bound mind of the HOA. Alex, meanwhile, was inside, enjoying a glass of crystal-clear, perfectly chilled water, utterly oblivious to the low-stakes surveillance, and completely unconcerned. The subtle hum of Alex's well system was a symphony of independence, a stark contrast to the growing cacophony of frustration emanating from the Prosperity Point HOA offices. Mrs. Albright's initial confusion had curdled into outright vexation. A full 2 weeks had passed since the municipal water cut-off, and still, there was no desperate plea from Alex Caldwell. No frantic emails. No angry phone calls. No withered lawn or dirty car. Alex's property remained an infuriating oasis of green in a community battling the summer heat. The water meter, the undisputed arbiter of their authority, stubbornly showed 0 consumption. It was an affront, a direct challenge to Mrs. Albright's carefully maintained order. It defies logic, Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Albright declared at the bi-weekly HOA board meeting, her voice a strained whisper that barely masked her fury. Mr. Henderson, A retired accountant who favored strict adherence to the bylaws nodded solemnly. Perhaps he's just using bottled water for everything. Or bathing at the gym, he suggested, though even he sounded unconvinced. Brenda, a newer, more pragmatic board member, cleared her throat. But Mrs. Albright, the sheer volume of water required for that garden alone, it's just not feasible. And he still has a pristine car. Are we sure the cutoff was actually effective? Mrs. Albright glared. Of course, it was effective. I personally confirmed with the utility company. The line is dead. He's in violation, and he's simply being stubborn, trying to outlast us. Her solution was to escalate. A new, more aggressive notice landed in Alex's mailbox. This one detailing accumulating fines for unauthorized use of community water, a baseless claim. Given the 0-meter reading, non-compliance with drought, advisories, and even a vaguely worded threat of legal action for defiance of board authority, it was a scattergun approach, designed to intimidate. Alex read it over a breakfast of fresh fruit, washed down with a glass of crisp, clear well water. They chuckled softly, the absurdity of the HOA's desperation painting a clear picture. The fines were laughable, they had no legitimate claim. Yet, Alex understood the game. It wasn't about the money, it was about control. Alex's cleverness lay not in grand gestures, but in subtle, almost imperceptible acts of defiance. They didn't flaunt their wealth. Instead, they simply lived normally, which in itself was the most profound form of resistance. On particularly hot days, when other homeowners were letting their lawns yellow, Alex would set up their sprinkler for a brief, visible run, just long enough for Mrs. Albright, who inevitably drove by for her community patrols, to see the shimmering arcs of water hitting the grass. They'd then turn it off, leaving her to stew in her certainty that Alex was somehow cheating the system, even though the city meter remained stubbornly at 0. Another time, Alex decided to wash their car in the driveway, using a powerful jet. From their hose, the sparkling clean car, gleaming under the sun, was a silent, infuriating beacon of water usage that Mrs. Albright couldn't reconcile with her cut-off orders. Each incident chipped away at the HOA's collective confidence, slowly but surely planting seeds of doubt among the less rigid board members. Maybe we should send someone to investigate his property directly, Mr. Henderson suggested during another heated discussion, clutching a copy of the bylaws as if it were a shield. Under Section 4.7, Exterior Maintenance Compliance, we have the right to inspect. Mrs. Albright nodded. Excellent idea, Mr. Henderson. Kevin, our groundskeeper, can conduct a drainage inspection again. This time, tell him to be thorough. Look for any unusual connections, any signs of something. Kevin, still as bewildered as before, arrived at Alex's house the next day, armed with a clipboard and an air of professional seriousness he didn't feel. He walked around the property, ostensibly checking gutters and downspouts, but his eyes darted everywhere, searching for a phantom hose connected to a neighbor's spigot, a hidden pipe, anything. Alex watched him from their kitchen window, a faint smile playing on their lips. They'd anticipated this. The wellhead was cleverly camouflaged beneath a decorative rock feature near the back fence, blending seamlessly with the landscaping. The utility shed housing the filtration system looked just like any other garden shed, its only unusual feature being the faint, almost imperceptible hum that Kevin, focused on visible pipes, completely missed. Alex even deliberately left a small, neatly coiled garden hose by the back door, implying a mundane, easily explained source of water. Kevin's search yielded nothing. He reported back to Mrs. Albright with a shrug, stating, "Everything seems normal, Mrs. Albright. No unusual connections. Drainage looks fine." Brenda piped up again at the next meeting, her brow furrowed. "Mrs. Albright, the fines are accumulating. He owes us hundreds now, but he's not responding, not even contesting them. And his water usage is still 0 on the municipal meter. This is unprecedented. Are we sure we're not making a mistake? Mrs. Albright's eyes narrowed. A mistake? Brenda, are you suggesting, Mr. Caldwell, a magician, that he conjures water from thin air? No, he is clearly defying us, and he will pay. This is about establishing authority, about ensuring transparency and compliance within our community. But her voice lacked its usual conviction. The internal cracks were beginning to show. Mr. Henderson, loyal as ever, backed her up, but even he seemed less enthusiastic, more weary. The unyielding normalcy of Alex's water supply was becoming a glaring, inexplicable anomaly that defied all their established rules and assumptions. The HOA, once a monolithic force, was now grappling with a phantom foe, a silent, unseen resistance that was slowly but surely eroding its very foundation of belief. Alex, sensing the escalating frustration, merely prepared for the next stage of the battle, knowing that the more desperate the HOA became, the closer they were to a truly spectacular revelation. The air in the Prosperity Point HOA meeting room crackled with a tension thicker than the summer humidity outside. Mrs. Albright, her face a mask of barely contained fury, stood at the head of the polished mahogany table, flanked by Mr. Henderson, whose usual sternness had morphed into a rigid indignation, and Brenda, whose earlier doubts were now overshadowed by a nervous apprehension. Alex sat opposite them, alone, but composed, a subtle, almost imperceptible curve to their lips that only served to further ignite Mrs. Albright's ire. This was it, the mandatory, final confrontation, orchestrated by the HOA to bring Alex Caldwell to heel. The official notice, delivered by hand by a grim-faced HOA security guard, had left no room for negotiation. Failure to appear will result in immediate legal action and further punitive measures. Mr. Caldwell, Mrs. Albright began, her voice sharp, cutting through the silence. We are here today because you have chosen to ignore every communication, every warning, and every fine levied against you for your egregious and ongoing violation of community covenants regarding water usage. She gestured to a thick binder in front of her, overflowing with printed emails, copies of notices, and printouts of Alex's stubbornly zero municipal water meter readings. Your municipal water service was officially disconnected 2 weeks ago, yet your property continues to consume water at an alarming rate, as evidenced by your perpetually lush garden and your freshly washed vehicle. This is not only a blatant disregard for our rules, but also, frankly, an insult to every other homeowner in this community who abides by the regulations. Mr. Henderson chimed in, his voice a gravelly rumble. Indeed, Mr. Caldwell, we've had reports. Neighbors have seen you. You're either illegally siphoning water, or you somehow reconnected your service without authorization. Both are severe infractions, punishable by substantial fines and potential legal action. We cannot have anarchy in Prosperity Point. Rules are rules. He slammed a fist lightly on the table, emphasizing his point. Brenda, meanwhile, avoided eye contact, shuffling papers nervously. She had voiced her concerns about the lack of evidence, the sheer impossibility of Alex's sustained water usage without a municipal connection, but Mrs. Albright had dismissed her as being soft. Alex listened patiently, their gaze calm, unwavering. They let the accusations pile up, the indignation of the board members washing over them without effect. It was almost comical, this display of impotent rage. When Mrs. Albright finally paused, expecting a contrite apology or a desperate plea, Alex simply leaned forward slightly. Mrs. Albright, Mr. Henderson, they began, their voice clear and steady. I appreciate you taking the time to compile this rather extensive dossier. However, I must confess, I'm a little confused. You say my municipal water service was disconnected. Correct. Mrs. Albright puffed out her chest. Absolutely. Permanently, until you comply, and you also state that my property continues to consume water at an alarming rate, despite this disconnection. Alex continued, a faint, almost imperceptible, smile playing on their lips. Precisely, Mr. Henderson interjected, triumphantly, which means you are either stealing water or using an unauthorized connection. Or, Alex said, their voice dropping slightly, gaining a quiet authority that cut through the room's tension. Neither. Perhaps the premise of your entire investigation is flawed. Perhaps you are trying to regulate something that falls entirely outside your jurisdiction. They paused, letting the words hang in the air, watching the subtle shifts in the HOA members' expressions, Mrs. Albright's face reddening, Mr. Henderson's brow furrowing, Brenda's eyes widening with a sudden, dawning comprehension. What exactly are you implying, Mr. Caldwell? Mrs. Albright demanded, her voice laced with suspicion. Alex pushed back their chair, rising slowly. I'm implying, Mrs. Albright, that your assumption that my home relies on municipal water entirely incorrect, and has been for quite some time. They walked to the corner of the meeting room, where a large, framed blueprint of a typical Prosperity Point home was displayed for illustrative purposes. With a confident gesture, Alex pointed not to the municipal connection point, but to a section of the property boundary. You see, while most homes here are connected to the city grid, mine operates on a completely independent system. They then turned back to the stunned faces of the HOA board. A few years ago, after experiencing the unreliability of city water during a drought, I invested in and installed a state-of-the-art private well and filtration system on my property. It draws water from a deep, abundant aquifer, processes it through multiple stages of filtration, including reverse osmosis and UV sterilization, and provides my entire household with pure, clean water, completely independent of the municipal supply. It's fully permitted, legally compliant, and entirely self-sufficient. Your cutoff of municipal water, while technically performed, had absolutely no effect on my water supply because I haven't used your water in years. The silence in the room was deafening. Mrs. Albright's jaw dropped, her meticulously coiffed hair seeming to deflate slightly. Mr. Henderson's face, usually so stern, was a mask of utter disbelief, his eyes wide as saucers. Brenda, on the other hand, let out a small gasp, a mixture of shock and a strange, almost vindicated relief. The air of authority that had permeated the room moments before evaporated, replaced by a palpable sense of humiliation and dawning panic. A private well, Mrs. Albright stammered, her voice thin and reedy, completely unlike her usual booming pronouncements. But that's not that's not allowed, is it? She looked desperately at Mr. Henderson, who was already fumbling for his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. There's nothing in the covenants against it, Mrs. Albright, Brenda interjected, finding her voice. As long as it's permitted by the county and doesn't impact community infrastructure or drainage, which Mr. Caldwell's clearly doesn't, given his property is always dry. Mr. Henderson, meanwhile, had found what he was looking for on his phone. His face went ashen. He's right, he mumbled, his voice barely audible. County records show a permit for a private well system issued to Alex Caldwell 3 years ago. Fully approved. Meets all environmental and safety standards. He looked up, his eyes meeting Alex's, a flicker of grudging respect mixing with his profound embarrassment. Mrs. Albright's face turned a shade of puce. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. Not only had they been completely wrong, not only had their punishment been utterly futile, but they had publicly accused a homeowner of violations based on a fundamental misunderstanding of his property, all while he possessed a perfectly legal, self-sustaining system. The fines, the threats, the entire aggressive campaign, it was all baseless. This is preposterous, Mrs. Albright finally managed, though her voice lacked its usual bite. We need to consult legal counsel immediately. This is an unprecedented situation. Her eyes darted around the room, no longer looking for compliance, but for an escape route, a way to salvage what little dignity remained of the HOA. The confident accusations had dissolved into frantic legal scrambling, their carefully constructed edifice of authority crumbling under the undeniable flow of Alex's independent water. Alex merely offered a polite, knowing smile, the quiet victor, in a battle the HOA had started, completely unaware of the true power their opponent wielded. The aftermath of Alex's revelation was swift and decisive, a legal whirlwind that left the Prosperity Point HOA reeling. Within days of the disastrous confrontation, the HOA's legal team, a firm known more for drafting boilerplate cease and desist letters than for complex litigation, advised Mrs. Albright and the board members to immediately drop all charges and retract every fine levied against Alex. The county permit for Alex's private well was irrefutable, a document that rendered every accusation of unauthorized water usage utterly baseless. The HOA had no legal standing, no legitimate claim, and frankly, no leg to stand on. The legal counsel made it clear. Pursuing this further would not only be a waste of HOA funds, but would expose them to a countersuit for harassment and defamation. Mrs. Albright, her face still a mottled red from the humiliation, had no choice but to concede. A formal, albeit terse, letter of apology was dispatched to Alex, retracting all fines and admitting the HOA's oversight. It was a bitter pill for Mrs. Albright to swallow, a public admission of her colossal misjudgment. The community's reaction was a fascinating blend of amusement, admiration, and a healthy dose of schadenfreude. News travels fast in suburban enclaves, and the story of Alex called well and their secret well spread like wildfire, fueled by whispers and the undeniable evidence of Alex's perpetually green lawn. Neighbors who had quietly resented the HOA's overbearing nature now looked at Alex with newfound respect, a quiet hero who had dared to defy the system and won. Children riding bikes would point at Alex's house, their parents sharing knowing smiles. Some homeowners, emboldened by Alex's victory, even started questioning other arbitrary rules enforced by the HOA, demanding greater transparency and accountability. The once feared Mrs. Albright found herself facing uncomfortable questions. At the grocery store, her authority visibly diminished. Her carefully constructed image as the unyielding guardian of Prosperity Point had shattered, replaced by the caricature of a Karen who had picked a fight with the wrong homeowner. For Mrs. Albright, the humiliation was profound and public. Her iron grip on the HOA board began to loosen. Brenda, the pragmatic board member who had voiced doubts, found herself gaining more support from other homeowners who were tired of Mrs. Albright's petty tyrannies and lack of foresight. At the next community meeting, usually a sparsely attended affair, the room was packed. Mrs. Albright tried to regain control, but her pronouncements lacked their usual conviction. Questions about the Caldwell incident dominated the agenda, and her attempts to deflect were met with polite but firm insistence on answers. The once loyal Mr. Henderson seemed to shrink in his seat, offering only mumbled agreements. Within a month, facing a groundswell of discontent and a clear loss of influence, Mrs. Albright announced her resignation from the HOA presidency, citing personal reasons. It was a quiet exit for someone who had once wielded such loud authority, a testament to the power of one individual's silent defiance. The HOA itself was forced to reevaluate its approach, promising more open communication and a review of its more restrictive covenants, a direct consequence of Alex's stand. Alex, meanwhile, continued to live in their self-sufficient haven, untouched by the shifting tides of community politics. The hum of their private well and filtration system was a constant, comforting reminder of their independence. Their garden remained vibrant, their water bill remained zero, and the peace of their home was undisturbed by bureaucratic meddling. They weren't interested in becoming a local celebrity or leading a homeowner rebellion. Their goal had always been simple: to live freely, unburdened by unnecessary rules and the whims of others. The incident with the HOA had merely been an unexpected, yet satisfying, validation of their choices. They would occasionally see Mrs. Albright in passing, her gaze now averted, her once proud posture slumped. Alex would offer a polite nod, a silent acknowledgement of a battle fought and won, not with aggression, but with quiet preparation and an unshakable commitment to self-reliance. The story of Alex Caldwell in the HOA serves as a powerful reminder that true independence often lies not in overt rebellion, but in quiet, deliberate preparation. In a world increasingly governed by rules, regulations, and the often petty dictates of authority, the ability to sustain oneself, to control one's own resources, becomes the ultimate form of freedom. It highlights the absurdity of systems that try to control fundamental needs without understanding the full picture, and the satisfying justice that can be achieved when an individual, armed with foresight and self-sufficiency, stands firm against the overreach of those who believe they have absolute power. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes the most effective way to win a battle is to ensure you are never truly fighting on their terms to begin with. The HOA learned a harsh lesson about assuming control, while Alex continued to drink deeply from the well of their own hard-won independence.